Good afternoon. This is George Pasty from Dantas, and welcome to our webinar today in terms of discussions around business efficiencies from material and services master data management. So a little bit about Dantas. Dantas has been in business for a little over 12 years. We took an approach to automate the MMDM space to the edge of what we could automate it. And we focus in on large asset-intensive manufacturing companies. There. So a little bit about myself. Sorry, I'm having trouble advancing the slides for some reason. I've been in the content and master data management space for about 15 years. In addition to that, I've experience in supply chain, supply management, international supply network, and I have an engineering background, and I've also worked in the engineering and manufacturing software application spaces. So I've been doing this for a little while, and I'm happy to answer any questions. My contact information is right here on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me or to my marketing team, and we'd be happy to provide you additional information or answer any questions. So for our agenda today, we're going to introduce material master data management as we see it, and then we're going to discuss some of the takeaways or some of the experiences we've had in our over 200 client engagements. And those are some of the pitfalls, what are the necessities, what are the benefits, what do we think you should be looking for as key functionalities in an MMDM solution. And we have a case study of one of our clients who they quantify 3 value buckets from pursuing a project like this. So to discuss what is MDM, it really is that central repository of information on materials that describe what they are, as opposed to an ERP or asset management software that has a lot of transactional information in them. This is really what they are, a repository of information. So this allows you to get an enterprise granular view of what you procure, you produce, keep in stock, what you order out of stock, and it contains a variety of data elements like manufacturer and supplier name and number, the individual part number itself from the organization, descriptive information, additional attribution for technical specifications, and stocking codes. It often also contains things like commodity codes and material codes as well to help to further define what this material is. We're also, as of about 5 years ago, we've also got into the service master data domain. And this is different than the materials for sure, but it also constitutes in some of our clients a very high level of spend. So they're very anxious to get visibility into it and to control it. So the kind of data it would contain are the classification of the services, the description of the services, who that supplier might be, is there a geographical component to that service, the frequency with which that service is encountered, and under what conditions. So when we talk about master data management, we really look at it from 2 different lenses. And the first is what we call get it clean, or the data cleansing process, where you're taking disparate, often inconsistent data that needs to be standardized to a specification template and recreate standardized descriptions for population into your transactional system. That's what we call the get it clean piece. We use a highly automated approach that we've designed, including artificial intelligence. And what that allows us to do is scale very quickly to get a quick time to value and process large amounts of data very accurately in a short period of time. The other side of the master data management equation is the keeping it clean piece. And this is on an ongoing basis. How do I maintain my data standards to the standard I adopted when I got it clean? And through this, we have a data governance platform that incorporates all the rules from the get it clean piece into the keep it clean piece to make it very easy for any unique new material requests to adhere to the data standards that have been adopted by the organization. In our case, we've got a very configurable platform with robust workflow capability. We use the same proprietary technologies we developed for the data cleansing piece and the keep it clean piece to make a very clean, easy-to-use interface that automates as much as we can automate the data entry and commodity code assignment, material code assignment, those types of things. So we have a few poll questions throughout this presentation. So if we could, I'd like to take 30 seconds just to get your feedback on your current data management environment. There's about another 15 seconds. Great. Thank you for your patience. So one of the things we want to talk about in terms of MDM and what we see in industry is, why would you do it? And, people like Aberdeen will tell you that you're going to see a 10% uplift in ROI for ERP implementations and consolidations by implementing a standardized material master data management solution. And they recognize that there's some foundational business issues that they would like to address through the consistent granular visibility across their materials and services. So many of our clients are telling us that they because they don't have standardized data, they have a growing duplicate inventory issue, so they're tying up a lot of capital in duplicate materials that they really shouldn't be, that their spending and sourcing efforts are compromised by poor descriptions through the supply chain process of trying to source that data, which leads to a feedback loop that's a big waste and effort. Obviously, if they can't find it, they're seeing a higher percentage of spend that is off contract, which, according to Gartner, is an 18% uplift. Many of them are trying to get enhanced inventory visibility across multiple plants or regions, and to help with transparency across that process. So one of the other things we see for people who've tried to do MDM, and particularly when they try to do it by themselves, is there are reasons why they are not as successful as they could be. And one of the things is there is a domain expertise that comes along with how you classify, specify, and define and enrich materials. And not many organizations have that. It's the change management aspect of what if I buy a new company and I need to assimilate all those materials into my organization? How do I manage that change? The other part is, what is the appropriate workflow and project process for implementation and tracking of these new material definitions? Many are tripped up on complex solutions that require a lot of data definition by the organization up front. So those are some of the issues we see. What we think would help in terms of addressing those is adopting a solution that's highly automated, because what that will do is it'll allow it to scale and provide high volume of quality material in a short period of time thereby not tying up our clients' resources, as well as providing the results in a meaningful period of time. You should be looking for somebody who has a robust, proven, methodical process. Who's done this before and in the data domains that you're looking at. And that experience is key, because I feel it for Dantas. Having delivered over 100 million materials, we've developed a very strong project methodology that allows us to be very successful. Second poll question, please. I could have 30 seconds of your time to consider this one. Thank you for your patience. So with those pitfalls in mind, let's consider what the need for Material MDM is as we see it. So what really comes down to is having that enterprise granular view and visibility into your materials across your enterprise, either regionally, plants, or internationally, is how we've configured them for our clients before. And one of the things that comes out of this standardized part descriptions is efficient search. And I think that's absolutely critical to the value behind MDM. If I can find it, and I can find it efficiently, it's going to create a lot of goodness to the supply chain and supply base in my organization. So this will drive more spend on contract, help you find existing inventory or preferred suppliers for non-stock materials, and it'll also make your engineers or supply chain professionals more efficient because they're not spending a lot of time looking for materials. Through the visibility, many of our clients have seen substantial reduction in inventory by being able to identify duplicates and consequently reduce the capital that's tied up in that and the carrying costs associated to those. So that's another area that many of our clients are trying to achieve. But when they do need to create new items, there has to be a mechanism in which that can be done quickly and easily to conform to the existing data standards that have already been created, as well as the cross visibility of that enterprise view that helps to drive the most efficient use of your spares that you may have. And we see the example all the time where one plant will decommission an asset that's being used in another plant, but they'll scrap spares even though they could have shipped them to the other plant. So by having that visibility, you can avoid those types of scenarios. And almost all of my clients have done some level of spend management, typically at the classification level, so they know how much they spend on, say, powertrain, but they don't know how much they spend down at the 100 horsepower, 1800 RPM, 240 volt explosion-proof J-frame motor level. That's really the next level in leveraging your categories and spend, is getting that kind of granularity. So where do we see people realize the need that they need to jump into MDM? One of the most common is an ERP or asset management software implementation or upgrade. They recognize that the value they're going to get out of the reporting and operational efficiencies and other value buckets from that implementation is only as good as the data they put into that system. So many clients, and I still see it today, who do not adopt a cleansed material standard and import their existing inconsistent, disparate data into their new system, do not realize the ROI they were looking for. Another big driver for people looking to cleanse and manage their data better is in mergers and acquisitions. So obviously, if you're bringing two companies together and they've either had or not had differing standards. Bringing that material together to get a unified view to leverage the efficiencies between the two clients requires cleansing that data. And in fact, some of our clients have actually gone as far as to quantify parts of the shareholder value they're going to show to justify the merger and acquisition through that consolidated view across their supply chain. The third area we see the most in terms of a driver is process improvement projects. People recognize that they just aren't being efficient with their data. I had one client who had 10 categories that they had over $500 million in spend in across 4 different business units. And all 4 different business units were on different systems using different standards, if at all. And they were spending 80% of their time trying to cleanse that data on a quarterly basis to make supply chain decisions. So they recognized the need to put in standards and processes that would allow their data to A, get cleaned, and B, maintain that standard so they could be much more effective in their analytics as opposed to just being data scrubbers every quarter. So there's a lot of different reasons for process improvement. It can be inventory reduction. It can be on-contract spend. It can be more efficiency in terms of how you're viewing that supply chain. It can be efficiencies in your engineering group on how they find parts. So there's a lot of different drivers that go into process improvement projects that we see. Third poll question. If you could give us 30 seconds, we'd greatly appreciate if you could respond to this poll question. Thank you very much. So let's start talking about some of the business gains. So what kind of productivity can you look at in terms of doing an MDM project? So contract spend is obviously a big one. I have a customer example where I'll be talking about one of their value buckets there. Almost all of our clients are looking to lower their inventory or carrying costs values, and we see on average 8 to 15% reduction in inventory, but we have some outliers out there where they found 40% duplication. So it depends on your background. Have you acquired a bunch of like companies and not cleansed your data yet? Then you're probably going to see a lot of duplicate inventory. The other thing is, if people are finding parts, they're not requesting new material. So we see many of our clients see a tapering down of the new material requests per year because people are finding things. We talked about duplicate inventory and inventory deletion, and by finding parts and client uptime, some of our clients have told us that by being able to find parts easily, they've avoided some false stockouts, which has increased their plant uptime. So many of our clients today use some kind of forms-based new material requesting process. One of my clients had a process that was forms-based, and from the time the request went in to the time it was approved, on average was 5 days. And during that 5 days, they would say that the engineer not having any feedback may actually request that material again because he doesn't know where it is. So it would be like a duplicate request for the same material, just based on lack of visibility and efficiency. And with our governance tool, they took that request process down to 3 hours, and on average, and gave that engineer visibility into exactly where in the approval process that material was. One of the other gains that we're able to provide is faster project implementation. We have done this 200 plus times, and because of that, we are largely pre-configured out of the box to be able to wade right into the most complex data projects. By way of example, we delivered a project of close to 1 million materials last year in a little over 7 months. Now, that's pretty fast. It was a pretty clean project, but well under a year. And I don't know many people who can do that at the quality levels that we can do. So, big driver in ERP projects is increasing the ROI and taking risk out of the project. So, in terms of having a domain-specific expert in materials and services take care of the data cleansing, we take a lot of risk out of the project. In fact, we've got several clients where they're 6 months out from implementation and they're like, I got 200,000 materials, and what am I going to do? And they're not going to meet their go-live dates. So that they'll call us up, and oftentimes we come in at the last minute and help get them back on track. So some of the key functionalities in our tool is, I think number one is anytime you're looking for somebody to work with on a large complex data project, is you're looking for somebody who's been there and done that and has proven capabilities. And we've done this across some of the largest companies in the world, the second largest oil and gas in the world. Projects up to 10 million materials and downwards towards 70 million materials. So, 70,000 materials. Sorry, I misspoke there. And the benefits and our expertise span multiple operational groups. So, we're familiar with working with engineering, supply chain, sourcing, manufacturing, obviously commodity managers, and third parties. Many of our projects come through working with consultants, the IBMs, Deloittes, Accentures, et cetera of the world. So we're very good at working in a teaming environment with other consulting organizations. And I think our proven capability comes from the fact that we've been there and done that. So we have over 200 successful implementations across 100 clients. Now, the hidden meaning in that is that the 100 clients have come back to engage us again. So that means we delivered the first time, and then maybe they acquired a company or they only had funding to do a subset of their materials up front, but they've come back to us. So I think that's a testimony to our ability to deliver. And we're very transparent. And what we want to do is have a very clear understanding and expectation setting with our clients about what we can and cannot do. And we demonstrate that through what we call a proof of concept. And that's where we take a small subset of data, maybe 500 materials from our clients, and we run it through the data cleansing process. And if the data governance tool is on the table, we'll load it into the data governance tool, and we'll demonstrate against our blank canvas of how we would run it, what we found in your data, and how it will work in the governance tool. So it's not a production engagement; it's a proof of concept. So, but we can tweak it to accommodate things like the different commodity codes you might use, like UNSPSC or PIDEX or UNSPSC, E-Class or EOTD. So, we can do that, or we can even do the POC against a custom commodity coding system that you may have spent years developing. So we're very flexible in that regard. And you won't hear us talk about customization. We talk about configuration because we've designed both our Keep It Clean and our Get It Clean platforms to be highly configurable. And because of the automation we use, I'll give you some fancy words. We use, probability and proximity matching, combined with comparative and or fuzzy logic match to the specification templates. What that means is we've automated the process that allows us to scale very well. And because of the AI is a closed-loop learning by example model, the more materials you run through it, the smarter it gets. So having run over 100 million materials through the tool, it already knows about a lot of the commercial off-the-shelf and engineered componentry in the industries we call on. So what does that mean to you? That means that we can greatly reduce the setup time to execute the data cleansing. What else I think we've done a very good job of, and this is the first company I've worked at that has an MBO for our software developers for our data governance tool and our harmonized platform, which is the Get It Clean piece, is they have an MBO to reduce the number of mouse clicks that anybody would have to use the system, and embed the complexity behind the scenes of what our AI engine and automated engines are doing, so that the end user has as easy a task as possible, while ensuring that you get a quality output. And I think we've done a very good job of that. And if anybody's interested, I'd be happy to set up a demonstration of that. It's just all you have to do is reach out to us. So we're very robust in materials management and service master data management, and we're agnostic. We work with all kinds of different PLM, ERP, and EAM systems. We had one client who had 18 different types of systems that we worked with across the top of them. He had different instances of those same types of systems, so the actual system count was closer to 50, but those 18 unique different brands of software that we were working with. So we're agnostic to the different types of ERP. So by way of example, here's a client of ours that's a pretty good-sized steel manufacturer. They're actually world-class, and they service automotive appliance infrastructure, construction, power gen, and other distribution of raw material markets. And the current state of their organization when we got involved is that they had a purchase parts initiative in which they were trying to drive efficiencies and productivity to help their organization be more competitive. From a legacy perspective, they had 425,000 legacy items in MRO from obviously numerous suppliers. These guys also had multiple source systems with varying data structures that had been created by different business units and by acquisition, so they had no consistency in their material data descriptions. And this purchase part initiative included the implementation of a new e-procurement system. And they wanted to get a consistent, clean material master using this e-procurement system. So their existing environment was that they had no enterprise view of the granular data in their MRO databases across the different systems. So what they were looking for us to do is to cleanse and enrich their material master data to a standard at the enterprise level, and to provide them a robust, easy-to-use search capability so that their maintenance team could easily find preferred parts from preferred suppliers. They were also looking for identification of duplication to help lower inventory, handling and capital costs, and as well as the plant downtime issue we talked about earlier. So the direct effect was they were looking for us to help optimize, particularly against this e-procurement system upgrade, and give them some bottom line savings. As a profile, they were approximately $8 billion in annual revenue, $1 billion in annual MRO spend. They were holding around $400 million in inventory value, and as I previously mentioned, their inventory count going in was 425,000 items. From a harmonization perspective, when we ran their data and we harmonized it, we were able to help them identify duplicates and really delivered back to them 340,000 unique items after weeding out the duplicates. So the raw count improvement was a 15% reduction in total SKUs and a 10% identification of duplicates. So what's that mean from a numbers perspective? From a numbers perspective, they really looked at and quantified this in three different buckets. They were looking at carrying cost reductions. So their factored cost of capital was 4.4%, and by reducing 10% of the $400 million inventory, they were able to realize $1.7 million in factored costs that they'll realize every year. That's an annual savings that's reoccurring, as long as they stay on top of making sure they don't duplicate their database again. The second area they looked at was in the area of aggregation of demand. So what they were looking at here is You know, if I've got $1 billion in MRO spend, and I identify 15% as similar, and they are buying it from different suppliers, I can now go back to my supply base with $150 million of addressable spend to get better PVAs. And in their case, they were able to realize 12.5% reduction on that $150 million, which equated to $18 million in savings. So from the data cleansing perspective, they totaled about almost $20 million in savings. From the governance perspective, the ability to get more spend on contract, and the interesting thing here is of that $1 billion in spend, 80% of it was under contract, but about 40% of that was not being spent on contract. So by being able to provide people consistent descriptions that are easy to use, easy to find through a data governance tool, they were able to increase compliance by 15% on their contracted spending. Now, their numbers were 16.5% was the penalty for spending off contract. Gartner will tell you that's more like 18%, but these are their numbers. And what that net means is of that $120 million at 16.5%, that was, again, another almost $20 million they're saving every year in reduced Maverick spend, or more spend on contract. So the total project for the steel company realized a combined cost saving between data cleansing and governance of close to $40 million. So that's a pretty good ROI right there, just in these three buckets. And there are ancillary savings in other areas, but they did not choose to quantify those. So why would you engage with a company like Dantas? I think the biggest thing is because we've proven with proven technologies. And our domain expertise to deliver projects on time and within budget is really like no other company in this space. The 12 years that we've done, I'll give you an example of how aggressive our product development is. We had our integrity governance tool on the market for a little over 7 years. We're on our 15th major revision. It's an industrial strength tool that we have clients who have rolled it out over 7,000 end users, and that's all in a hosted environment. Our AI-driven tools and our core proprietary technologies of classification, deduplication, enrichment, and ability to master data has been used by thousands and thousands of users, and we've cleansed against hundreds of millions of parts. One of the reasons our clients find us easy to implement is because we provide a hosted environment. So IT departments typically really like that because we're not trying to get behind your firewall. Right? From a data cleansing perspective, it's batch in, batch out. We provide you a data load file. From an ongoing data governance perspective, it's a middleware integration to your ERP and asset management softwares of choice. And again, we're agnostic that way. We've had a lot of experience in MRO, services, and chemicals. But that's not to say we haven't done direct materials as well. I have several clients where we've done direct materials. They are a different animal, typically requiring a lot more specification in terms of attribution, but that's nothing that's a limitation within our capabilities. So a little bit about our customer base. We call it predominantly in the energy sector, natural resources, overall manufacturing, and food processing. I mentioned that we do direct materials, and we mostly see that in the manufacturing sector. But for food processing, natural resources, oil, gas, and utilities, that's mostly indirect materials and services. So that's where we spend most of our time and where we have a lot of our expertise. But that's not to say we don't have outliers in the medical devices industry and other industrial sectors that are not captured here. So that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And again, this is our corporate contact information. Happy to reach out to us either at that location or I will take you back to my contact information. So please reach out to either of us. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask now, please submit them, and we'll take it we'll take them right now if we can. Okay, I see one coming in asking about how the middleware integration works. Now, I'm not the technical implementer, but essentially what happens is we send an XML via middleware out to a handshake that is then integrated to SAP, Maximo, whatever you have, Oracle, and that can be bidirectional. So if there's additional elements you want to see in our governance tool, say bin location, quantity on hand, those types of things, that can be synchronized back to our solution. If you want to give more of a 360-degree view of the part in our integrity data governance software. We typically would start work on the middleware integration while we're cleansing the data, and we typically have a user acceptance testing within 2 to 4 weeks of delivering the finalized data load. So it's domain specific. It's light and easy, as opposed to say an SAP MDG where you're going to be writing a lot of rules. You're talking about a year to implement. That's not what we're talking about here. But on another note, I would like to say that we do work with SAP MDG from a data cleansing perspective to take a lot of the risk out of implementing a solution like that, because we can provide back the class structure, the separately fielded attributes, the data templates for immediate load into MDG, as opposed to having to develop that yourselves. So I have several clients where they've retained us for that type of the service. Okay, let me see if we've got another question. Yep. So here's a question about training. What kind of training is there in your solutions? Well, I think I mentioned we've got really two. We've got the harmonized platform, and that's traditionally delivered as what we call a turnkey service. That is, we're driving the software. We're just working with limited engagements on the client's resource teams to understand any nuances they want us to reconfigure the data templates to represent industry-specific or business-specific ways they want that data represented. And it gives us a chance to get on the same page for expectations. And I'll give you an example. What's HP mean to you? Is that horsepower, or is that high pressure? So we sort through all those things and make sure that we have a consistent data model. But from a training perspective, there really is no training from the harmonized perspective because we're running the software. We do conduct quality reviews through the software, but we are with you for that. And there's not really a training curve for that. For the integrity tool, we really have primarily 3 classes of users. We have the end user, the search, find, compare, and request person, if they have request permissions. Sometimes that's relegated to further down the food chain. Then we have the data stewards, people who are fielding the request and making sure that they're in compliance and resolving any issues of outstanding data. And then there's the system administrators, the people who actually set up users, change workflows, do things like that. So from an end user perspective, the training is typically 30 to 40 minutes. And at that point, they'll be effective in search, find, compare, and request, or just search, find, and compare if they don't have request permissions. And that can be done over a WebEx, or it can be done in person, client preference. But if you're training 7,000 people, it might be easier to do via WebEx. Just saying. The second, the steward users, that's typically less than a day and a half. Kind of depends on the number of the questions. Typically, we can get through that in a day, but we like to schedule a day and a half. And that's the same with the sysadmin. We typically schedule 2 days, but we can get through it in a day and a half on average. So those are kinds of the training commitments that you're looking at. So from an end user perspective, very quick and easy. That's testimony to the ease of use with which we've built into the system, and something that will benefit the ongoing governance process, because that user will be able to walk away from the system, 2-3 weeks and come back and be effective. And if they've forgotten something, we have context-sensitive help in the application that will then remind them what that function does. So very easy to use. Okay. Okay, here's a good question I just got. What's your experience in dealing with international clients in multiple languages? Interestingly, early in our history, many of our clients were out of Europe and Asia. So we've developed a very strong language capability. Currently, we've worked in 26 different languages and have the capability to both process that data from a data cleansing perspective. And the way that would work is every one of our clients who set up an enterprise material repository has done that in English. So what we do is we translate those regional languages to English, cleanse it, and then if they want that standardized description back in that regional language, we can then provide that back into that regional language. From a governance perspective, we can not only represent the local language in our user interface so that all the buttons and tabs and pull downs are all represented in that local language, but we can also automate the translation between a material request and reproducing that standardized material request in that local language. So say we have a request coming from Brazil in Portuguese, our software will use our translation tables to both show the Portuguese request as well as translate that to English, and then the enterprise team, if they approve the request, will then shove back the standardized Portuguese description to that regional system, be it whatever, SAP, ERP, Maximo, Oracle, what have you. But that English representation will be maintained in the enterprise repository for that material. So that's a good question. We've worked with Asian languages. There's a big difference between translating Thai than there is Spanish, and we know the difference between Mexican Spanish and Spanish in Spain. So we understand the difference between Canadian French and France French. So all those little nuances come into that translation game. And another component of the translation is some languages lend themselves to a high-quality output through machine translation. And for those, the cost would obviously be a lot lower. And for those that require human QA, the cost will be higher. So largely speaking, a lot of the Romance languages lend themselves very well to machine translation. A lot of the Asian languages require human QA. That's just a broad brush. We really have to get down into the specific languages that you're interested in. I hope that answered the question. Okay, one more. What's our pricing structure? So our pricing structure is twofold. One for the harmonized get it clean piece, and two for the integrity keep it clean piece. So for the get it clean piece, there's really three dials that impact pricing. We price based on a fixed price per part model. So the more parts you have, the less expensive it is per part. The second dial in there is enrichment. And that's where we're going to third-party sources to enrich the data for missing attribution to give you a more robust and complete description of that material. That's another dial in the price component. The third price is what we just talked about, translation. And, of course, that has to be diagnosed on a how many materials, what language basis, and does it require bidirectional. But the three impacts are actual unique material count, third-party data enrichment, and translation. And those three things are how we come up with the pricing around our data cleansing services. And in that per SKU count, we have bundled in the project management, data profiling, all those things that go along with processing the data. The other part of that question is our data governance software. That is priced on an initial provisioning fee. That's when we set it up, load the data from the harmonization process, develop middleware connections to the other transactional systems of choice, and that's a one-time fee. The other part of it is an annual use license per number of named users. So if you have a lot of named users, we typically get into enterprise level pricing. But if you just are restricting the access to integrity to, say, just the data stewards, and you have a 20, 50 user license, then that will be based on number of users. So that's how our pricing model works. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're going to finish a little bit early. Again, that's my email and phone number. Should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I hope this was a good use of your time and your mind. Thank you so much.